So I did my undergraduate and graduate studies in a field of research called human ecology, which is, broadly speaking, the study of how people and their environments co-evolve over time, and particularly how technology and settlements and things like that mediate those dynamics between them. And in the course of doing that, I got very interested in this question of, well, if we need to make these big changes for sustainability, is the pathway to do it through persuading and encouraging people to do more sustainable things, or is it through much more intensive transformative work with a lot of participation and a lot of difficult but rewarding change for people? And you know, it's half joke, half serious. I sometimes say that's working out my relationship with my mum and my dad, because my father is an American ad man by training. He worked in Boston and New York, did copywriting, all that kind of stuff. So he was very much in the persuade and influence camp. Whereas my mother was the first graduate of a social ecology program at the University of Western Sydney in feminist social ecology. And so she was very much about the systems transformation, participation sort of side of things. And so you can tell a lot about what you need to know about my approach from trying to work out those two influences. I got involved in the university's environmental management system, ANU Green, and I had the job of sustainable transport change. How do we get people out of cars and into carpooling or public transport or active transport? And how does the layout of the city and the availability of public transport and things like that affect people's ability to do it even if they want to? I ended up applying for a job as a social research lead at the Victorian Environment Protection Authority. Long story short, a few years in, I'd convinced the organisation that we needed a dedicated social research budget, and within weeks of that, we were approached by a bunch of chancellors from Monash University, including Liam and Jim Curtis and John Thwaites, looking at how do we apply behaviour change approaches to achieving public policy outcomes. And our CEO wandered down to my desk and said, "Hey, I've got this great partnership for you." And I was a bit ambivalent at first. I had other ideas for how I wanted to spend that money. But pretty quickly, I began to form a really great working partnership with Liam and Jim and BehaviourWorks as it grew. And you know, those 7 or so years with BehaviourWorks in the beginning, we tackled around 24 substantial projects, ranging everything from how to get people to pay attention to beach water quality signage, how to get licence holders to submit their licence reports on time and to quality, and how can we help fuel retailers selling petrol to detect and respond to leaks in their tanks when all the incentives were pushing them to ignore it and hope it affected someone else. Yeah, regulation, give or take, is a shove, right? And so I got very interested in how behavioural science could help make smart decisions about what regulatory tools to apply when, because when you look at the theory and practice of modern regulation, it's very clear that regulators need the full suite of voluntary through to coercive interventions that behavioural science talks about, and they should and could and should be very strategic about when to apply what. You know, rather than being a regulator interested in behavioural science or a behavioural scientist interested in regulation, I was very much interested in that interface between the two and how you can make good decisions about achieving public good outcomes by using behaviour change insights to help make those decisions. The big challenge that really I came across through my career is that all the tools and approaches of behaviour change as applied to public policy do tend to push us towards changing the behaviour of end users, consumers, citizens, and tends to forget or ignore that those people's decisions and opportunities are shaped by powerful decision makers in business, in government. So I think lifting our gaze from to whose behaviour could we change to whose behaviour should change how in order to solve a problem is a really big one. And we don't just need to plug and play changes on the production side of things, give people Priuses instead of petrol cars, but we actually need to change how we live and how we do things. The big idea I'm pursuing right now is that if we flip that question on its head and say, well, why is it that it's very hard for only a few people to do these things? And the kind of things I'm talking about are drastically reducing red meat in our diet, or only flying overseas for a holiday once every 8 years, or keeping your phone for 7 years instead of flipping it every year. Shifting your daytime energy consumption to when there's peak solar as opposed to when it's convenient at night. As you begin to look at all these different changes, you pretty quickly run up to, well, there are things a motivated individual can do, but how sustainable and widespread that is really strongly shaped by decisions other people have made about what technologies and infrastructure is in place, what kind of planning schemes limit, enable what's available, and so on. And so I think that by deep diving on what would it really take to do these transformative lifestyle changes and feeding that into, well, what does that mean in terms of changes in policy, in business, in infrastructure and engineering, we can get a lot further, a lot quicker in these major changes. And so by looking through the lens of behaviour change in everyday life, and then following that through to its full conclusion on what does it mean for powerful decision makers. That's how we tackle the problem, I think. Yeah, and I don't think we're doing that yet in behavioural science as it's applied to public policy.